All right, welcome to the afternoon session. Thank you for joining my talk. I'm Jonas, I work for EclipseSource. We are a company focused on building tools and IDEs for our customer. And we are also heavily involved into open source projects and ecosystem, especially the Eclipse ecosystem. And as we nowadays mainly build web-based tools, I can even narrow that down to the ecosystem that is called Eclipse Cloud Developer Tools ecosystem. And today, in this session, I actually do not want to talk about something technical, which we actually do a lot, because we are all software engineers, but I would like to talk about a more higher level topic, and that's open source collaboration. So that's the title of my talk, Success Stories of Open Source Collaborations in the Eclipse Cloud Developer Tools ecosystem. Why do I want to talk about that? When I look at the current way how companies and stakeholders are collaborating in this ecosystem, I see really a lot of innovative stuff happening, types of collaboration that I didn't observe in the past, and that I believe are really, really beneficial for the stakeholders and for the ecosystem. So I thought I would like to talk about that, because sometimes it's actually not seen by many people. And the goal of my talk is to show you some examples and give you some best practices on how stakeholders, individuals, and companies can collaborate in open source and really benefit from that. Because when people talk about open source, it's always mentioning, okay, we have great and open collaboration, but what does that really mean in practice? Like, how can you do that? How can you make it happen? And how can you benefit from that? And because there are many success stories, real examples, I will sum them up in this talk today. Now, before I dive into the examples, I would like to do a quick introduction that we are actually on the same page. I keep that very simple, and I would like to start with the question, what is the financial benefit of using open source software? Right? Very simple question, might be obvious, but still I think it's worth to mention that. Now, if we simplify that a lot, if we want to build something that is this high up the arrow, we can either, in software, build everything ourselves, right? Then everything belongs to us. We don't have to worry about any license, but we have to pay for all the development, right? And now the idea of open source is actually very simple. Instead of building the full tower, we use something that is available open source that we can actually use for free. That's the green part. And very often these are frameworks or platforms that provide us with some generic functionality that other people need too. So we only have to build the red part, which is actually the part that is specific to our project, right? That's really the very simple idea. Now, is this the full truth? Like, do we only have to pay for the red part? No, it's not, because somebody needs to take care about the green part too, right? And in an ideal world, and that should be actually, from my point of view, the goal of open source, if we have this again, red part is ours, we fully pay for that, we fully take care of that, green part is open source, that we take part of a small fraction of the green part, right? And now if many parties do that, the green part is safe again, and we only have to worry about a small part. But we should be aware, if we use open source, somebody has to take care of the green part too. Like, it's not completely for free. Somebody has to do the work. And ideally, there's collaboration going on in this area, and that's the main topic of my talk today. Now, if we think about the green part, what we actually want to achieve if we use open source software is that others contribute to that too, right? We potentially want to contribute ourselves, but we also want that others contribute. Now, what are contributions that we actually want from others? I just listed what's typically wanted from project. First step is testing and hardening, and that can be actually already achieved if some other party only uses the same software. They don't necessarily need to contribute something in terms of code, but if they just use it, they will find corner cases, they will find failures, and if they report them, that's already a good contribution. Of course, we would like that other people not only report bugs, but also fix them. We would like other people to contribute features and extension, to contribute to the general maintenance, but also to meta artifacts like documentation, marketing of the project. And ultimately, and I think that's kind of the ultimate goal, ideally, I even want to collaborate with these other people and stakeholders and develop something together, right? So that the final solution even gets better. Now, how do we achieve that? What we always have to keep in mind is that there are always these two circles in terms of requirements. Like on the left side, what we need as a stakeholder, like what are our requirements, what do we need in our use case, and what does the project need? In a perfect world, there's a full overlap, but in reality, there's of course not a full overlap, right? People have different interests. Now, how do we get a community to contribute? What can we do as part of the community? Now, the goals here should be, first of all, if we use a project, we should have an interest to get more adopters. Adopters are stakeholders that use something. They don't necessarily contribute, but they use it. Now, why do we want to have more adopters? First of all, they contribute to the hardening and the testing. And second, even more important, only adopters can potentially be contributors, right? If a stakeholder doesn't care about a framework, they will never get contributors. So it's really a marketing thing. The more adopters we have, the more likely we get more contributors. So we want more contributors. We want to have the right contributions, right? What does that mean, the right contributions from our point of view? And as a stakeholder, you can be selfish, right? You have an interest, you want certain things to happen in the framework, and it's completely valid to also influence the ecosystem that the right things happen. And ultimately, try to multiply your own efforts. That means if you contribute or if you do something in the project, the best way to do that is if your actions actually trigger other people to do something too, right? Because then you get much more for the same money, for the same effort. Now, what can we do? What are strategies? I will very quickly mention the strategies, but then I will dive into the example, which makes it much more clearer, because otherwise this is just kind of blah, blah, right? It's just things. So the strategies that I will provide examples for is first, do it yourself, right? You have to be an example for others. You have to start actions yourself if you want others to do something. That can be seen in many, many successful examples. Get the ball rolling. Don't wait for others to do something, but initiate something yourself and rather get others on board. Provide guidance to others. Don't underestimate how valuable it is to tell others what you expect them to do, right? They still have the decision to do it or not, but if you provide guidance, it's much more likely that other people behave the way you want. Communicate very open, also not to be underestimated, and do advertising, right? Treat a open source project that you use as a product that you want to sell to others to get them on board, be adopters, be contributors, and so on. And finally, enable formats in which you can directly collaborate with other companies. All right, now, these are just words. Now I want to mention 3 concrete examples from the ecosystem that happened during the last 2 years where these strategies were actually applied. And I did not invent these strategies, I rather observed them, right? Now, number one example that I want to mention is the VS Code compatibility in Theia, where it was achieved to get more contributions and the right contributions. Now, before we talk about that, quickly introduce what that actually is. Theia is compatible with VS Code in the sense that you can use VS Code extensions in Theia. It provides the same API. And the task that needs to be done there is whenever VS Code publishes a new API, Theia has to implement it too. Very often it's not actually a lot of work, but it needs to be done. There needs always something to happen. And this is actually a great feature of Theia because you can benefit from the huge ecosystem of VS Code extensions and Theia applications too. Now, what was to be done there? Now, this feature, the VS Code API in Theia, has originally been contributed by Red Hat back then, like many years ago. And they actually have put a lot of effort in that. But then there was a time where not so much effort was spent on that anymore. And the compatibility was kind of lost. There was actually a gap of almost 2 years or 3 years between VS Code and Theia, which was a really bad thing because you couldn't use all the VS Code extensions anymore or not the newest version and so on. Now, the situation was that there's still a couple of stakeholders contributing to that, but they were rather fixing problems that only they have in their problem. Like they wanted to use a specific extension, so they fixed some parts of the API, but that was it. And this was really, really a blocker for the adoption of Theia, so it was really, really a problem. Now, the action that was actually initiated by, in this case, STMicroelectronics, is they looked at the problem and they said, okay, first of all, it's completely unknown what the problem exactly is. People don't know what to do. We don't have a defined diff. Nobody actually knows what exactly to contribute to. So they reactivated a tool that was also originally provided by Red Hat, but was not active anymore. And that's a tool that created a diff between the VS Code API and the Theia API. We see a screenshot of that on top, and that showed exactly in which version is which API missing. So we see here unsupported. So it was very easy to see the diff, right? So the problem was suddenly very visible. And second, what they decided to do is to create issues. We see one example here. What are the tasks that we need to fulfill to achieve version 150, 160, 165, and so on? So suddenly it was completely structured, and everybody in the community could see, okay, this is what we would need to do to actually get there. And all these issues had the help wanted tag, right? They said, okay, if we want to do this, we need to do this together. And then as a next step, they just started doing it, right? They got the ball rolling, they contributed to this, and within a very short amount of time, others saw, okay, now there is a structure, we know what to do, and they're actually doing it. We do the same, because we're interested in this getting fixed, and we can actually share the work, we have a good work structure, and suddenly there was a lot of progress. In parallel, there was a lot of communication and marketing around that. This was discussed every week in the developer meeting at Theia. It was announced, okay, we're currently close to 1.40, this is missing, who can take this over? And in all release announcement, we actually published, okay, now we achieved this, we achieved this. So there was really some sort of gamification. And suddenly people really believed, okay, if we continue like that, it's achievable. It's not that we are running behind, we are actually catching up. Right? And that plays a huge role, I think, for motivating people, that you see, okay, others contribute, together we can actually do it. And it's not that all of our developers do nothing else, like it's really, we can share the work. And then, so this was the original state, Red Hat contributed, STMicroelectronics got the ball rolling, and then others joined, right? EclipseSource, Typefox, Ericsson, ARM, and others. There's definitely not complete list, but these are the biggest contributors. And we can see here, this is 1 year. 1 year ago, we were like 2 years behind, and we can clearly see how our Theia catched up. And today, I'm very happy to say, we're actually there. The problem is fixed, right? We are exactly 1 month behind, and this is conceptually the close that we can get, because we have to wait until VS Code publishes an API, right? The process is still active. This issue is created every month. Everybody knows what to do. The work is still shared. Very successful model. Now, I call this model the train, and the reason for that is what actually happened is somebody set up the train. He told everybody, here's the train, it's leaving at 4 o'clock, we will be in the train, here are your seats, here are the tickets, you can take a seat and be part of the train, very simple. And people actually joined the train, right? All right, that was the first example. Before we look at the second one, I would like to introduce a working group that you might have heard of, because that plays a role in the next example. And that's the Eclipse Cloud Developments Working Group. That's a collaboration of stakeholders in this ecosystem, and it enables a format to collaborate and drive initiatives, right? There are monthly meetings or bi-weekly meetings. Initiatives are discussed. Events like TheiaCon are organized, and it's a very great way it provides a format, a way of collaborating between these stakeholders and initiating initiatives. Now, why does this play a role? The second example that I would like to talk about is the embedded SIG, or CDT Cloud, where we have a good example of communication and direct collaboration. It's quite different from the first example. Now, what is this about? Now, the problem that was actually tackled here is that many vendors are currently developing a strategy on how to migrate their tool offering based on web technology, right? That's what's going on. And especially in the embedded area, a lot of people are confronted with the question, traditionally they have been based on Eclipse CDT, and now when migrating to the web, what are the technologies that we should use, because there's much more fragmentation in the web, right? There are many different things that you could potentially use, but there used to be nothing like Eclipse CDT that just bundles everything together and gives you a default choice. Now, but there were several stakeholders in the same position. They all kind of had the same problem, of course, with their specific requirements. Now, what was initiated to tackle this problem, and I believe it was actually initiated by ARM, is to create what's called a special interest group, which is a format that the working group provides, where people who have the same interest can collaborate with each other, can share knowledge, can drive initiatives, and so on, and really discuss, okay, how are you going to solve the problem? We have this idea. What do you do? Which compiler do you use? How do you connect this to that? What technology choices do you have? And it was actually part of that, or I was lucky enough to be part of that. There was really a very constructive collaboration of people that really knew what they are talking about, right? So different companies, potentially even competing companies, shared their knowledge and their experience and their progress with migrating their tools to the web, which led to a huge benefit for all the stakeholders because they could benefit from what others actually already found out. Now, there was a time, in the early times, this was mainly talking, but then it was seen, okay, we actually also have code, right? We have some components. We want to somehow fit them together. For example, Trace Compass, the cloud version, the GDB debug adapter connector and stuff like that, a memory viewer. But actually, everything is somewhere at the moment. So how do we bring that together, and how can we change our collaboration to not only talk, but also develop something together? And that was the time when the SIG decided, hey, we create a project. Yeah? There's really a need for a project here. And that was the inception of CDT Cloud almost 2 years ago, which is now the new home for C, C++ development based on web technologies at Eclipse. And we can see the project is actually a huge success. If we look here at the contributors, the activity, from day one, there was a lot of activity. So it's not just vaporware, it was really integrating often existing components and putting them together. And also provides a distribution, meaning a tool that you can just use called CDT Cloud Blueprint. The SIG decided then, because there was a lot of collaboration happening then in the project, it also had a monthly call. The SIG decided then, hey, actually, we are not needed anymore. We can collaborate. We have a new format of collaboration, which is now actually the project. So the SIG was kind of officially deprecated. What really happened is evolved into the project because a lot of coding was going on. And this collaboration is still super active. There are monthly calls where people from different companies join. They discuss what requirements they have, like, for example, hardware breakpoints, so really future things. And they discuss how to solve that and how to collaborate. And they really spend resources then, work together in a great way. So this is, I think, another great example of open source collaboration. I call this the Scrum, because what's really happening is that clever people from different companies just put their head together. They talk regularly. They share open their knowledge, up to a certain extent, of course. And they develop together and share the cost for their common requirements, right? Really, really great success story from my point of view. Before I dive into the third and last example, I would like to quickly mention something about the ways that you can actually contribute to open source projects. Because for many stakeholders, that is actually creating some problems. Now, the most obvious way is if there's an open source project, you can actually directly contribute to that. But if you think about it, many companies have an issue, like who should do that? Who has the knowledge to do that? Who knows, for example, the platform code? Who has enough time to become a committer or something? So how can we actually do this practically? And especially for smaller companies that do not have enough money to spend a full-time person as a committer on a project, they maybe still want to contribute, but in a smaller fraction, right? So, of course, this model is still a very good one because you gain some knowledge about the technologies, and I think it's really something that you should aim at. But there's also another model that is actually happening a lot in this ecosystem, and that's called sponsored development. And the idea is there are several companies in this ecosystem that provide this service. They already have committer and knowledge about different projects, and you can actually contract them to do changes, right? And that can mean you contract them to develop a certain feature that you need, to fix a certain bug that bugs you, but also to contribute to the general maintenance. And what I observed personally in the past, like 10 years ago, many of the sponsored development was really, okay, we want this single bug to be fixed, but nothing else. But in nowadays, companies that I observe have more understanding, okay, if we only fix this bug, this is not a good thing. We also need to contribute to general health of the project, right? And that's really, I think, a good idea. So how to find these companies? Many project websites actually have a support section, and these sections list the companies that provide support for a specific project. So for example, here we have Theia, where we have Typefox and EclipseSource. So you can click there, you even have the choice between different vendors, and you can get in contact and an alternative way to contribute. All right, example number 3, marketing. So why do we care about marketing? It's open source, right? And this is actually a very big one, and it kind of combines all strategies that I mentioned before. Now, what was the original problem? That was also like 2 years ago. It was discussed in the Eclipse Cloud Development Working Group. As a reminder, this is this collaboration of the different companies there. That we want more adopters and more visibility for the ecosystem, for the projects in the ecosystem, so that, again, that we get more adopters, more contributors, and better technology. And of course, like software engineers often have a tendency to say, okay, now we have to implement these 3 features, and then everybody likes our technology. But very, very often, it's at least as important to also make the technologies visible and attract new adopters, right? To show them, hey, this is cool, you can actually use it. Now, what was done? So in the Eclipse Working Group, a discussion was started, and ideas were collected. Where do you see shortcomings, right? And then kind of a to-do list was created. For example, documentation of certain projects could be better. Website could be better. There could be an easier way to try out a technology, stuff like that, right? And this to-do list was kind of created in an informal way. For example, some people from the Eclipse Foundation that are into marketing reviewed the website of Theia and actually really created an issue. Okay, this is what we suggest to change and to improve. And then suddenly people started to do something, right? And there were different contributions to this. I would like to summarize them a bit. First, the Theia website was completely overhauled. And one important one that I would like to mention is this section selected tools based on Eclipse. Almost no effort to introduce that, and we made it very easy to add a screenshot of your tool to the Theia website, right? Which is also some sort of marketing for your own tool. Now, people that actually already adopted Theia started to put their screenshot there, which is again great for other adopters because they see, wow, cool, ARM is building a tool based on Theia, that must be good. Or for example, Logical is building a tool and we do something same, so maybe we have a look at that. Also, we added videos, we kind of refactored the messaging and kind of recreated the website to be more marketing focused, right? To really give a good first impression. There was this initiative of adopter stories, so certain companies decided, hey, we actually we are interested in showing the world what great things we build based on this technology. So for example, Arduino. The Arduino IDE is based on Theia, but actually nobody knew that. So in collaboration with the Eclipse Foundation, an adopter story was written that you can find in the website. Other people can see that and see, wow, Arduino is building on that. Let's have a look. Or Logic Cloud, there was another adopter story from industrial automation. Again, they shared their experience with using all these great technologies. There was a lot of investment into documentation. And again, ST Microelectronics led the way here, so they started to do this. But again, after an initial structure was done, like a lot of documentation was already there, you could clearly observe that it was now much easier for others to contribute there. If almost no documentation is there, nobody writes documentation, right? But if it's already good, it's much more fun and much more obvious to add something there. That was especially focused on Eclipse GLSP and Theia. And actually, I'm pretty proud, or the community is also proud, if you look at that in OpenHub, that's an open source project analyzer, both projects are very well commented, very well documented. You hardly find any open source project where this is the case. We established a regular release announcement, where every month the new features are published, news around the community are published. That was not existing before, so that people could really see all the activity that was already happening, but nobody knew. Theia Blueprint was created. That's a standard distribution of Theia. As I mentioned before, Theia is actually a platform, a framework to build your own tools, but it's hard to get on board if it's just a framework, right? I mean, you don't want to start with consuming NPM modules. You want to try something when you get in touch with a project. And Theia Blueprint is exactly that. It's a standard distribution, a tool that the open source project is providing, kind of an example. In the meantime, it's much more an example. It's actually a usable IDE. And this was made available as a downloadable installer, but also in an online demo. So you can just go to the Theia website, click there, and then you have an online browser version where you can just use and try this. Yeah? And again, it creates trust for new adopters and shows them, okay, this is the technology, this is what you expect to motivate them to try and use these technologies. We introduced a community release cycle. Theia has a monthly release cycle, but in addition, we decided we want one slower release that lives on top of the monthly releases, where we focus more on compatibility and stability. So community releases are published every 3 months. They have a release candidate that is published 1 month before. There are actually hot fixes happening. So especially for companies who build something based on Theia, it's much more convenient because they only have to update every 3 months, and they can test the releases beforehand and so on. And also we enabled other technologies that integrate with Theia to list versions on the Theia website that are compatible with a specific community release. So this is a service for the adopters. If you use Theia and, for example, you want to integrate Sprotty, CDT, or GLSP, here's the version that we already tested for you, right? Now, what was the result of that? These are adopters and contributors list 2 years ago, and only within this time, this list was doubled, right? By the way, also this list of companies on the website, we made it much easier to get your logo here, right? So we don't know whether these companies, like some of them probably adopted Theia before, but now it was very obvious for them, okay, we put our logo there because others do the same. And I think these lists are really important, at least for me, if I look at a project and I see, I don't know, companies like Samsung or Ericsson are using this, that means there is some trust behind it, right? So at least that doesn't mean necessarily I use it, but at least I have a look at that, right? And I call this strategy the queue. Fun fact, when I was younger, I used to work as a DJ, and what's actually happening in real life is that if new discotheques or bar open, what they do is they hire students to stand in a queue in front of the entrance. And the reason for that is, if there is a queue, it looks popular, right? And you go there. Of course, if you then go in, it has to be good, yeah, right? You cannot fake it, but you can make people interested by showing, okay, other people are doing the same thing, so you should have a look too, right? Still, you have to convince people then technically, but to get them on board, that's the cue. All right, now to sum up the strategies that I showed you in the 3 examples. First thing is do it yourself. Don't wait until other people do it. Really do the things that you expect others to do. It's really surprising how well that works, right? It's really surprising. It's not that others will just block, at least not in this ecosystem. That's not my observation. Get the ball rolling. Don't wait again. Really enable or do some action and then invite others to join by provide guidance, like tell people what to do, openly communicate and advertise what you do, right? Think about how to get more people on board, show them that the activity of your project, and try to create formats where you can directly collaborate with other stakeholders in an open way to even collaborate already when planning to do something on an architecture level, on a requirement level. because that will probably lead to the best solutions at the end and even joint development of certain features. All right, and with that, I would like to close. I would like to announce there is a BOF today in the evening, 7:30, that has the very generic title, Building Web-Based Tools with Eclipse. It's a generic because it's just a place, it's just a room where the community can meet and discuss whatever we want to discuss, right? So you can just join, you can leave anytime, but here you will meet committers, contributors, stakeholders of this ecosystem just for an open discussion. All right, and I would like to close with that. If you liked the session, please evaluate on the conference website. If you didn't like it, forget what I just said. I think there's no minus button. And now I'm very happy to take any kind of questions.
It's really annoying me, this slide. Do you really want us to give you 1 star? It goes to 5 stars.
No.
Okay, please clarify.
I would like you to vote in an honest way, but if you think less than 5 stars are appropriate, then I don't want you to vote. All right, are there any questions or comments? Real questions. How are we actually in time? I think good. Yeah, then thank you very much. I hope you could get something out there. If you have any further questions or comments or want to know more details, you find me typically at the booth over there, the blue one. And just feel free to talk to me or drop me an email. You find my contact details in the internet. Thank you. Enjoy the day.